Some Yvette Nicole Brown tweeted, "Can he be Vice President Obama? Can he be Joe Biden's Vice
Oh,
President?" Yeah, I think it's
huh.
not. I think it's not constitutional though, because he's already served 2 terms, and I think that's the limit. And if he were to be the vice president, if he had to take over the presidency at some point, he could not run for reelection. But that doesn't mean he can't be there. I don't
Or
know.
be a part of the advisory, or be a part of obviously being in a cabinet
Something.
position would be, something. He can be
Something.
have fingers in the puppet strings, whatever it is, but be involved, be connected. Karen, you'd mentioned earlier, people who don't vote, or people who did not vote, and hoping that they are not one of the almost 150,000, because those numbers aren't going anywhere but up. I just want to remind people that it's not, again, we are not here to vote for your pastor. This is not going to be your baby's godfather. This is not going to be the person who passes out communion at your local church. This is a person who will literally be picking the EPA director. That will determine the quality of our environmental protection. This is the person who will be picking the education, Secretary of Education, which we now currently have Secretary DeVos, who has never taught. I don't think she ever went to public school, or her children have never been in public school. So you're picking the person who's going to pick that. You're going to pick the person who will determine what our financial policy looks like, both as it pertains to the market and as it pertains to agencies like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. You're going to be picking the person who will be picking judges. You spoke yesterday about Grace, the young girl, and we spoke last week with the reporter from, I can't remember the publication.
ProPublica.
ProPublica, that talked about Grace. And there are all these protests to get Grace out, the young sister who was basically incarcerated for not completing her homework. That was a judge's decision. A judge determined that Grace is, as I think you said, she is exactly where she's supposed to be. And that judge has the ability to determine whether or not Grace gets in or whether or not Grace gets out. We have right now the couple, I believe it was in Missouri, that stood and brandishing their weapons and at the peaceful protesters, and there was a move to have them prosecuted. And now you've got talk about how the people in position of power in that state are talking about, well, we'll pardon, or we will not move forward with this prosecution. These are people who literally have the ability to determine what is a crime, what is not a crime. When we have people who are in positions of power that can determine whether you get access to freedom and you're protected by the cloak of whiteness, or if you're going to be treated like a black person in the criminal justice system and be incarcerated. So when we're talking about picking a president, it is not about your bestie. It's not about your homie. It's not about your boy, your man, your dude, your ace, your boom. And it's not about any of that. It's about who is going to manage this country as we continually transition through this pandemic. Who is going to be in charge of picking healthcare policy? Who's going to be in charge of determining whether or not we're going to listen to the scientists or just make stuff up? Sorry, I almost cussed. Like, that's who we're talking about. So I just need people to know we have a binary choice. It is A or it is B. If you pick C, you are literally giving your vote to the incumbent. So we don't need people to be waxing poetic. Why do we got to choose the lesser of two evils? Because you didn't do anything to create a third party. Yeah, creating a third party is difficult. But if you're not going to do it in the years between the election, please stop worrying about it and waxing poetic about it on social media during the year of the election. We got to be smart. We got to be smart. Literally, lives depend on these decisions, and this is not a game. This is not a game.
No, as Portland is finding out, and soon
That's right.
New York will be finding out, and Philly will be finding out, because there's a paramilitary Gestapo type force going on that nobody seems to know who they are, because they're not really wearing any identification. Some have on things that say police, but anybody can get that online, and they're wailing on people. They're literally hooking off on folk and shooting them with rubber bullets in the head and billy clubbing them. They billy clubbed a guy that was a Navy veteran who came up to them just to ask them, why are you gassing mothers? Why are you? Because there's a line of mothers wearing pink shirts, yellow shirts, and helmets who are protecting the protesters. They gassed them with tear gas. And he went over to ask them, as a Navy vet, hey, I'm one of you. He didn't even get to have a conversation. They started hauling off on him, and he didn't flinch, even though they broke his arm.
He sure didn't.
So I don't know what's going on with that subversive military arm of this president, but he is deploying it. And we saw shades of it when he walked and with that Bible upside down, which I think is prophetic as well. When he walked to that church with his paramilitary crew, tear gassing, peaceful. Those were peaceful. What's going on in Portland is something I don't even understand it. Personally, I just really don't.
Yeah.
I don't get all of the nuances of the details. It's not Black Lives Matter. It's something else. Something else is going on there. I don't know what it is.
It's a practice run. It's a practice run. And we should not be surprised if we see unidentified paramilitary troops. Mercenaries is what they really look like to me. When we can't identify where you come from, you could literally be any mercenary group that has just gathered and is out there. We don't know because we can't tell where you're from. But the reality is we should be prepared to see similar types of approaches at the election booth in November, which means we need to be having conversations about how to prepare for that now. We need to be prepared for seeing similar types of troops or military operations, in the cities that have been mentioned, but particularly in heavily Black communities. What is it going to mean when we have shootouts where, double-digit number of people are being injured by guns at a funeral, which is going to further provide justification for outside troops to be sent in? We got to start thinking 5, 6, 7 steps ahead, because right now we're dealing with people who've been planning for this for a very, very long time. I'm sad to say that I've been telling Black people, get your passport, get your passport, get your passport. Damn. Didn't realize we would be dealing with a pandemic that was being handled with such foolishness that other countries are now saying, you got an American passport, you can go wherever you want to go. You can go home, but you can't come here. So now there's almost a feeling of, in some ways, being trapped and stuck in this space. So we have to be clear about what we are dealing with, and the fact that belief in Americana and American exceptionalism is not going to save us. These are very, very dangerous times, and people have to be ready.